Welcome to Homestead Reptile. This is a budget build. So what I'm building here is the super large 3-pack. It is called the organizer acrylic box slash purse box, blah, blah, blah. So I made the smaller version of this, and the smaller versions are a little bit bigger than a 5-gallon, but not by much. This is the equivalent of almost an 8-gallon. I think it's like 7.99 something. So it's very close to being 8 gallons, but not quite. But this is pretty big. The dimensions are decent. The price was extremely fair. So I got this on Black Friday. It was $35.99 when I purchased it. And so dividing that by 3, that was $11.99 each, and $11.99 for something of this size is a very good price. They are currently not that price anymore. So right now they're on sale again. So right now on Amazon they were $59.99. Now they're $45.99. So that would be about $15.33 each. And that's still a pretty good price. It's still a very fair price. So I did have to make a few modifications to this, and right now I'm just tapping this frame in with this little rubber mallet. It did not come with this rubber mallet. I had this from another build. I was building a lot of stuff today, but I will be making a few modifications, like I said. So Mud was my first gecko that I used as a model for the smaller version. Mud's a much bigger now. He's a 49-gram gecko. So he is going to be modeling this new model of enclosure that I'm going to be putting together. So would I put a 49-gram gecko in this size enclosure permanently? No, but I could see quarantining them in here. I can see just like I have to temporarily move them in here for whatever reason. I could see totally doing that. I could see growing them up until they're 30 grams, then moving them into something bigger. Juveniles can definitely grow up in this. Small micro geckos, morning geckos. I'm actually moving my morning gecko colony into this. This would be amazing for it. And I'm going to show you the two different sizes. So this is the smaller side right here, the one that's all planted up. And this is the super large. And you can really see the difference in the width and the height and just how much bigger. The smaller one can fit inside the larger one. It's just so nice. I absolutely love it. And again, I will be making some modifications. So I'm going to be putting this ventilation in up the top right here. I will be siliconing the bottom to make sure no moisture gets out. And I'm also going to be adding a little piece of acrylic sheet to the side where the door opens to keep substrate from coming out. So the problem I had with the first build was occasionally a little substrate would get kicked into the door jamb and it wouldn't close properly, so you'd have to flick it out. It's a minor inconvenience. It's mildly annoying, but I knew to solve this I'm going to have to get a little bit of a substrate barrier so I don't have that problem again, because these were not meant for reptiles. They're meant to organize stuff. So I made that little modification and I already really like it. So right now I'm just melting a hole in this acrylic box. So you could, tape this down, and if you have the equipment, you can just cut it through. I don't know how to use power tools very well, and I'm dangerous around power tools. I've been banished from them, so I'm using this. Now, my incompetence around power tools is one thing, but this works pretty well for me. I've been doing this for years. I don't want to accidentally saw my toe off. But besides this works well for me, or for anyone who's also incompetent around power tools and have been banished from the power tools. I can go again about this. But this was pretty easy. Popped this out and made a little bit of a whoopsie. I made the hole way too big. You can see right there, way too big. So thankfully I had another option. I used screen lidding from something else. Acrylic screen lidding that I was able to just put on this one, and I made sure to make the hole a lot smaller than the ring I had cut out for it. So you can see here, this is a completely different material, but again, it is pretty thick on there. I bashed my hand into it, I poked at it, and made sure if I can't easily break into it, a gecko's not going to be able to. So again, just squished a little bit of acrylic in there, not acrylic, silicone. Sorry. Put a little silicone in there, make it watertight, and I have to let this sit for a couple of... normally let this sit. This is a small amount, and I'm not putting anything in here, so you'd want to let this sit for maybe a day, maybe 2, depending on the instructions. But did all that. It's a little time consuming, but it's not that bad. And I have to let that dry before I get to the next part of my project. So right now I am putting in another little bit of ventilation. So this ventilation looks different. It's smaller. So this is because the animal I'm going to put in here likes higher humidity. So I made a smaller amount of ventilation. So this is going to be the morning gecko enclosure. They prefer less ventilation. Their needs are very similar to dart frogs. They like higher humidity than a crested gecko. So less ventilation. They like it a little more humid and kind of boggy like. But they still need airflow. So this is what I did. Alright, the last piece is almost out. Just going to press down gently. There's a little bit of a piece still stuck. Going to get the rest of that off. There we go. Almost there. Still quite a bit hot. There we go. So you can see the edges are a little ragged. So they're not sharp. It's just the melted plastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some snips. And I'm going to snip this all off. And right now you can see I'm going to the bottom to make sure there's no big drippy spots that are sharp at all. I don't want my little guys cutting themselves. But it's a pretty easy process. It's easy to do. You just have to be careful not to burn yourself. And again, I'm just taking these little snips and I'm snipping any of these big pieces of plastic off. Again, this took me quite some time to finish all 3 of these. I think it took me almost like an hour to finish all 3 of these. It's just time consuming. And it takes a while to get a lot of this stuff done and make sure everything is safe. And then some steps I have to wait a couple of days to get finished. So right here, just some hot glue. It's very simple. I'm not doing anything extravagant. I didn't get fancy ventilation. You can't see the ventilation, so I don't really care. Does this look messy? Yes. Are you going to see it, this spot? No. So I don't care. As long as you can't see it and it's not ugly to the eye, and I can hide it, I don't care. So I'm just tapping down to make sure this is all flush. And then I will poke it again to see if it's sturdy. And again, morning geckos are going to go into this. So if I can't pry it off with one finger easily, it's fine. So right here, I am cutting my little acrylic sheet. So this is some leftover acrylic. I do a lot of these little projects. If this is interesting, I might show you more, but it is time consuming to do this and film it at the same time. So I don't know if I will do this again, but I figured it might be interesting to some people. So I prefer working with acrylic over glass. It's just, I don't have the whole shattering thing. So I tape it up just to make it a little easier to cut and to break off. I put in a little piece of background down there. And you can see I put the little acrylic sheet in there as a little barrier. And I will be moving the morning geckos into this little enclosure. So I'm going to be dumping some soil in there. And you may see some dog feet. So that is Archie, the bed mooch. Well, it's not the bed, the couch mooch in the gecko room. He is not supposed to be up there. He has his own dog bed, but he is up there, and I do not have the heart to kick him off. He's old, he has 3 legs, and he's sad, so he puts up a fuss when I kick him off the bed. He slowly slides off like, look, you're making me and my 3 legs get off this couch. You're horrible. So we're just going to leave him be there. And he's kind of out of the way. But first layer of the soil's in. Going to grab the morning gecko enclosure. Grab the morning gecko enclosure, and I am going to be catching morning geckos. My favorite activity. Ugh. I love the morning geckos, but to be honest, they are a pain in the anus. They are anus pains. They are So when you get into morning geckos, if you're a morning gecko owner, you know they are pains in your anus. Because if they escape, it can be months and months until you catch them. I have two that are free roaming. They're not supposed to be free roaming. And I can't catch them. I've been putting out traps for months and months. I will eventually catch them when I'm lucky. But I've like stayed up late at night with a little spotlight to spot them in the gecko room to try to catch them. They are pains in the butts. But here's a little morning gecko. That's a fully mature female. 99.9% of all morning geckos are females. There are a few males, but they're not super common. And I believe it might be a myth that the males are sterile. I don't know. I can't remember. There was something weird about it. But you can see this is their old enclosure. And I had that that styrofoam pool noodle stuff to use kind of as a substrate barrier. It worked. It's ugly though. I don't like it. And I like the acrylic sheeting better. So I'm going to be switching everyone to that. So I think in this enclosure, they could have used a tad bit more ventilation. So I'm glad I put in that more ventilation in their larger enclosure. They did have dry out periods, but I think having more ventilation will just help it dry out a tad bit faster. Nothing's like sodden or super moist, but they do like it, moister. They kind of like it at frog levels. That's why they can cohab with dart frogs. These guys used to actually cohab with some thumbnail dart frogs, but they kind of were out competing them. There was just more and more of them, and my thumbnails were just getting a little thin, and I thought they were out competing them for fruit flies. They definitely were, so they got switched to their own enclosure. So I will be transferring the plant in here, moving this little cork background, and I love these these cork backgrounds. It's like they're inexpensive. The plants will grow on them. They hold moisture. They look nice. And I believe I got it in a flat of 3 or 4 for like $10. It's a good price. I prefer these little cork backgrounds. So I'm going to be moving the morning geckos in here. Or the pain in the anuses. So move them in here. They're freaking out. Got a few more left. There we go. Last one. So this is their new enclosure. I think it looks pretty good. I think they will definitely enjoy this. And it's a nice enclosure. It's not bad